Hey, Creep Cult, welcome to your weekly bonus episode. We are continuing with the Alphabet Roulette, and this week we watched Little Shop of Horrors from 1986.
You're almost there. You're so close.
Ooh, I was already
nailed
old.
it. 1986, not to be confused with The Little Shop of Horrors. They pulled a Facebook here. They dropped the. It's cleaner. Little Shop of Horrors. And for the animated show that I didn't know existed until today that ran for one season in 1990, they just called it Little Shop for the kids.
They don't want kids. Yeah.
So the plant didn't eat people in that, and Seymour and Audrey were like 13-year-old kids.
Oh.
And it was just with a talking plant.
Interesting. What was the point of the show? Like, what was?
I mean, they didn't. They did that in the 90s all the fucking time with everything.
Killer Tomatoes got a cartoon.
Yeah, Killer Tomatoes got a cartoon. Beetlejuice got a cartoon. Like some Ghostbusters, some worked better than others. But yeah.
Some background on this: directed by Frank Oz, screenplay by Howard Ashman, who worked on the original play, I believe, and so based on the play, and also based on Roger Corman's version.
Psycho Corman.
Psycho Corman. Yep, starring Rick Moranis.
Rick Moranis.
This body seems to be suffering from rigor mortis.
Ellen Green, Vincent Gardenia, Steve Martin, Levi Stubbs, James Belushi, John Candy, Christopher Guest, and Bill Murray.
So I think the reason why it comes up as James Belushi is because he was...
That was back when he was trying to be a serious actor.
He's also a guest. He wasn't like an actual like star of the film. He was like a cameo, basically.
Yeah. Also, hot take, the better of the Belushi brothers.
I don't know about either of them.
But we'll end that discussion there.
I do know that he has like a weed show. Where he has like a giant weed farm.
Yeah, he's a big medical marijuana proponent.
It's like, right on, guys.
But yeah, so what I did, just as a little extra homework, is I did end up watching the original The Little Shop of Horrors, Roger Corman's version. And I think if I had seen that first without having seen this version, the musical version, I probably would have felt a little bit more positive on it. I thought it was fun. It's a fun little B sci-fi horror picture from back in the day. You know, it would have fit right in line with when we did all of our creature camp sci-fi stuff. But just if you've seen the musical version, it takes everything that's good about that version, like all the goofiness and the charm, and just
makes it goofier and more charming.
yeah, and just elevates it to perfection. But some highlights of the original are... We get Jack Nicholson in like his third performance, and he plays the Bill Murray role in that movie. So he's like the guy who is, and he's hilarious because he's just like, hey, yeah, and telling the dentist and going crazy and getting all, horned up about dentist stuff. And also just the story behind it. Basically, they were going to change the rules for how you made movies, how you had to pay your actors in 1960. Where you would then have to give royalties to your actors, in perpetuity for whatever project they were involved in. And Roger Corman, who was infamous for being a super low budget director, like that's how he exploded and kind of created his whole model around that. He was like, shit, that's going to completely destroy my model of just using super cheap actors I don't have to pay, after the movie. Just pay them like no money and go. So he scheduled the making of this movie for like the last 2 days of 1959, basically, like in that last week, so he could make this movie without those rules. And so this whole thing was shot like in the span of, or the original was shot in like the span of 2 days.
Wow.
And Nicholson talked about how like most of it was just they'd rehearse it real quick in the parking lot, walk onto the set, flip on all the lights, run it, cut it, go.
That's crazy.
And yeah, so. That's fun, and I mean, just the story is cute and fun, and but the musical is just a million times better.
John, why don't you tell us what the basic story is for anyone that might not know?
So basically, there is this gentleman by the name of Seymour who lives and works in a flower shop, and on a random day, is walking down the street, and there just happens to be a solar eclipse. And during the solar eclipse, there is a seed pod that pops up in a flower bed at this place where he regularly goes to buy clippings, and it turns out to be an alien from outer space. Ooh.
A mean green mother from outer space, to be specific. Yeah, so he ends up taking it back to the flower shop, and we find out pretty quickly that this plant grows by being fed blood. So then at first Seymour is feeding it his own blood, and then that escalates to him having to feed it people. And his lust for the love of Audrey, the blonde woman in the movie with the voice, and his greed for wanting to just be known and be successful gets the better of him, and his life unravels in beautiful musical fashion. Yeah, and this was done by, like you said, Frank Oz. So there's obviously that connection to the Henson Company. So the Henson Company, like a bunch of their veteran creators, worked on this, which obviously you can see in all of the puppetry when, from when Audrey's small to, or Audrey 2 is small to when Audrey gets big and starts singing and is all crazy. And
the practical effects in this movie are fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I read that when the puppet is in like its biggest form outside of the ending, which is a whole discussion that we'll need to talk about, but when it's in its biggest form, they could not nail down the movement right to make it seem natural. So what they finally discovered was that if they shot the Audrey 2 puppet in a slower frame rate and then sped it up, they could get it to look natural.
So the actors had to do the same thing.
Yeah, so anytime there was an actor sharing a scene with it, they had to like lip sync all of their dialogue in slow motion and then dub it over later when the footage was sped up. And I'm like, that sounds like the biggest fucking pain in the ass.
Yeah.
And they make it look fucking seamless.
Yeah, I didn't notice that. I had read that, but I didn't notice anything during the movie. That was like, yeah, you could tell that shit's off.
But yeah, I first off, Rick Moranis, it's so sad that we haven't gotten to like enjoy the rest of the fruits of his career. Obviously, he made decisions that were best for his family, to make sure that he could, be a father first, and I think that that's it's a commendable action. But we lost out on one of the kookiest, fucking coolest like movie stars of all time.
What is the movie that you think of first when you think of him? Is it this?
Yeah, absolutely.
For
this,
me,
and then Honey, I Shrunk the Kids.
Yeah.
Because I watched those. The first one, didn't really care for the second one. I watched the third one a lot, too.
Yeah, when I was a kid, I watched either commercials for it or the actual movie. I can't really remember. A million times for Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. So that's the one that really stands out to me. As an adult, I usually go to Ghostbusters first in my mind. Yeah. And just because he's fucking hilarious. He's the best part of those movies. And like, yeah, that's the thing that I think a lot of people were like, oh yeah, Ghostbusters Afterlife was fun and it was charming and had a lot of the nice little nostalgia beats, but we really wish that Moranis had been there. Oddly enough, the most recent thing he's done was like a Mint Mobile commercial with Ryan Reynolds. And everybody was like, really? That's the thing you came out of retirement to do?
Canadian, right?
I think so, yeah. But what's the actress's name who plays Audrey?
It's something
Ellen
Green.
Green?
Yeah, she originated the role in the off-Broadway stage show, so she's like the connective tissue outside of the writer to the actual stage show version of it, and I can see why she got carried over. I know I read that Cyndi Lauper was like the main big name they wanted, and then they talked about Madonna, but her delivery, obviously, the voice she puts on, all of her mannerisms and the way she sings are all so specific and memorable that I'm really glad that she was able to carry over. And I guess she went on to basically have that be like one of the biggest roles that she ever did, because she continued to do it on stage after the movie came out.
Yeah, I think she was also in Rockadoodle as well, and puts on the same goofy ass voice. Yeah.
That's really the only thing I don't like about the movie, and that's just personal opinion. I don't think it changes any like how the movie should be received, but I just don't like her voice.
Just grating.
Yeah, I just think it's a little irritating, but that doesn't deter away from the fact that this is a great movie. I just don't like it. It's just personal opinion.
I mean, like, if I knew that person in real life, I probably wouldn't go out of my way to be around them. But in this movie, everybody is so, like, oddball and heightened, and just everything about it, like, down to the fact that, nothing is shot on any sort of location. Everything is on sets, specifically the 007 sets at Pinewood Studios, which
There
came
you
up
go.
in our trivia last week. So they had these massive sets for like New York streets and stuff, and it gives everything this kind of like weird, dreamlike, off kilter. I mean, really. Also knowing that it's a stage musical brought to screen, you can really tell that. But obviously they put as much money as they possibly could into making it work as a film and feel big. And this blew me away that when this movie came out in 1986, it was the most expensive movie that Warner Brothers had ever produced. It had a budget of $25 million that surpassed Aliens, which also came out in 1986, which had an $18 million budget. They were actually shot both on Pinewood Studios at the same time, to the point where a lot of in the behind the scenes extras for Aliens, a lot of the actors talk about how at one point there was a gun accident. One of the actors accidentally fired off a gun that went through a set wall and popped out on the set for Little Shop of Horrors.
Whoa.
And luckily nobody was injured. But
That's
they
crazy.
just shot from the Aliens set through to the Little Shop of Horrors set.
Yeah, I mean, that's a super crazy story, and it's like obviously great that no one was harmed on either set. But I mean, I wanted to talk about, like, obviously Rick Moranis being in this film is fantastic, but like the star of this show is obviously the music. It's one of the best written musicals that I've ever seen, at least as far as like blending into that comedy territory, because like every musical tries to have its one like comedic number to make sure to keep that everybody's awake in their seats and shit, but this just is constantly finding ways to either make you laugh or to kind of make you like cringe, but like in like a funny way. And it's all so put together. The songs are really great, and the performances of these songs in this, like I said, obviously choosing the actress who was in the off-Broadway play is a fantastic way to go about that. But also, Moranis stands up to the task. Like, he's got a really good singing voice.
Yeah.
And then having these background characters who show up all the time to do like the background vocals and have them kind of like do different things to make sure they sort of fit in the scene but really don't. Like, it just. Every time I'd see them kind of like through the window in the background, I laughed every time. Yeah,
it's a really funny movie, and the music. Yeah, I mean, I texted you, and it might have been Suddenly Seymour. Or one of the other, I was like, this song is a fucking bop, and then I was gonna text you right after. Every song in this movie is a bop. Like, also the thing that stood out to me was that we had mentioned it on a previous episode, but Seth MacFarlane obviously must just be a huge fan of Little Shop of Horrors,
because he ripped the entire thing for an American Dad episode. It's about
there's the whole American Dad episode where he buys a hot tub and the hot tub sings to him, and it's CeeLo Green doing the voice of the hot tub. But it's in the style of this. And then in Family Guy, they have the scene where the old man is singing
somewhere on the screen.
Somewhere, yeah. And I always remember that there's like, there's plastic on the furniture to keep things nice and clean. And I was just like, I never knew it. I was like, why are we taking this whole like 4-minute aside in this Family Guy episode for this song? As a kid, obviously having no idea that it was ripped like word for word straight from this, with just the old man singing the song, the creepy old pedophile man, singing it to Chris.
Oh my god.
Yeah,
that's pretty funny.
Yeah, all the music is great, and it's not surprising because the guy who wrote the music also wrote like the songs for Beauty and the Beast and like.
Is it Alan Menken?
Yeah. And a bunch of other like popular Disney movies where the music is the defining memorable thing about those movies. Totally makes sense. And I love also just the character of Audrey too. Like he, she, it, who knows, is so like sassy and such a fucking dickbag by the end. It was just like, nope, fuck it, I'm taking over the world.
Yeah.
And just like really just immediately sees how pitiful and worthless Rick Moranis Seymour is, and it's just like, cool, I'm gonna take advantage of this guy and ruin his life because I'm an evil alien plant.
One of the effects I really like too is that shot from inside the mouth. And you get to see the dentist. I was like, oh, that's cool.
Yeah, and they do that all through, I mean, as similar to some of the other effects as well. They do that through, similar to like what they've used for like Lord of the Rings and stuff like that. It's all through like perception. So like the shot is like really close on the inside, and then they make this like really big thing.
Oh yeah, like a forced perspective.
Yeah.
That's super cool. And the whole dentist thing too, like I think is so just so funny and doesn't necessarily need to be in the movie. Like I think if you took it out, the movie would function fine without it. But it's something from the original movie. And originally the idea was to have Jack Nicholson come back like all those years later and I think play the dentist character. But cool. I think Steve Martin is like, I love every scene where he's on his fucking motorcycle. Yeah.
He just goes.
I think every scene he's in, he's hilarious. You can tell he's improvising pretty much all of his dialogue. And then Bill Murray, just the two of them together. I think it may be the only movie that they're in together, which is insane to think about because they're just comedy legends. You get a small little brief appearance from John Candy, which is great. And then
he's hella funny, actually.
Yeah. And then he and I guess he originally was offered a much bigger role and he was like, do you have anything small that I can just like show up as a goofy cameo?
I think it was the shop owner.
Yeah. And then you have, I think Dick Miller shows up for like a brief little cameo, and I think he was also in the original one. But yeah, I mean, just like all the little cameos, if you like and recognize these people, they're all super fun. But yeah, I had an absolute blast with it. And let me see if I have any other fun trivia about the movie. Well, before we get to that, which ending did everyone watch?
So I've seen both. I
didn't realize there were two.
So
I didn't until I watched this and went, I don't remember any of this happening.
Did you watch a director's cut?
So I watched the like re-released 2012 version or whatever that has the whole like taking over the world bit at the end and the whole, and I was like, that's not what I remember happening.
So no, the theatrical ending, because it was similar to other movies that have been, potentially damaged by test audiences not liking an ambiguous ending. They watched the original ending.
What happens in it?
So in the original ending that they filmed, Audrey 2 spreads and takes over the world. Basically the Jim Belushi idea of taking clippings and spreading them everywhere and selling them in every flower shop in every town all over across the country goes through. Audrey 2 eats Seymour. And then
so he goes to try to kill Audrey. Audrey ends up eating him. You get this shot of his glasses just like laying on the ground. And I was like, oh shit, I didn't remember that. Yeah, and then you get this whole extended 4-minute musical number about don't feed the plants, because they end up taking over the world, and
they're on the fucking Statue of Liberty and all this other shit. They're
busting
everywhere.
through buildings and doing Beast from 20,000 Fathom shit, and it's all these crazy miniatures. And at the end, Audrey ends up bursting through the movie screen and doing a whole thing, and
it says the end ! Exclamation point, question mark, exclamation point, question mark, and then bursts through the screen. And that was originally the ending they wanted to go with, and apparently test audiences loved the movie and hated the ending.
Yeah,
so then they switched it for the Somewhere That's Green ending.
Yeah, Frank Oz was saying that because that's the ending from the stage show, obviously just on a smaller scale, the taking over the world at the end, and they really liked that ending and they wanted to keep it, and they had put in all of this work to do all of these miniatures, this huge table of miniatures and all this stuff for the Audreys to go through, and you have to get a test score of I guess 55 or above. And as soon as that, and like I said, everybody was loving the movie. And then as soon as they saw that ending, they said they ended up getting a 13 test score. And so had to push the movie from a summer release to a December release so they could reshoot the whole ending. And they ended up moving some scenes and cutting some things out. So the director's cut is substantially different in that way. And I was I did not remember there being this huge bombastic world destroying ending to this movie.
Nope. Audrey 2 gets electrocuted in the theatrical ending, and then they get their happily ever after.
How does the Corman one end?
In the Corman one, there's this whole, it's treated a lot more like a actual
a detective noir thing. It opens up with the police investigating, and the whole thing has these two cop characters who are trying to figure out who the murderer is, who's killing all of these people, and eventually they go to the flower shop, and the different blooms that Audrey is opening have the faces of the people that have been murdered. So then the cops realize, it's Seymour feeding the people to this killer plant. So then he is he comes to the shop and he's I got to destroy the plant to hide the evidence. And so he goes in to attack it, and it cuts as he's attacking it. And Audrey 1 comes in looking for him, and a flower sprouts up and opens, and it's got his face on it, and he goes like, "I didn't mean it," and it's got like a fly type, like "help me" type ending. Yeah, and they kind of do that in the redone version where Seymour and Audrey do get like their lovely home in the suburbs, but you get the little Audrey bud in the yard, which R.L. Stein totally rips off for Don't Go Into the Basement, the Goosebumps story. If anybody's ever seen that episode or read that book, he does that. It's the exact same thing.
Jockin'.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Oz said that the reason that he thinks that it worked, that ending worked on the stage and didn't work on the screen, is because on the stage you get the cast coming out at the end and taking a bow, and so people have this like disconnect in their heads where they go, well, if a character dies in a stage play, I know the actor's fine because they're coming out, but they said in a movie people get so invested, and if you kill off a character, that they're not coming back at the end. So he was saying like that's why he thinks that audiences didn't react the same way and why they had to change it.
I think that ending is a better ending. The original, the pre-tooling around ending, I think it's a better ending.
Yeah, and I guess they thought it was completely lost because the only place it existed was on VHS tapes that were given to like some of the crew for previews and stuff, and eventually one of those ended up turning up, and some restoration company was able to get like that and do some finagling of recreating assets and things, and were able to recreate the ending, and it eventually got a re-release. So yeah, I was very confused, but that's happened to us multiple times where we've watched like different cuts of something by accident and been like, what version did you watch? Another little bit of trivia that I thought was interesting that surprised me is that Mean Green Mother from Outer Space, which was written specifically for the film, was the first Oscar-nominated song to contain profanity. So, big deal there. And then the dental tools that are used in the dentist's office during Bill Murray's famous scene are reused in Batman from 1989, and they're the tools that are used on Jack Nicholson's Joker for his plastic surgery after he falls into the chemicals.
Oh, that's cool.
Which is funny because he's the character in the original Shop of Horrors that is at the dentist. So there you go. But yeah, that's pretty much all I got for Little Shop of Horrors. I loved it even more the second time around because I think I had only seen it once before, and I think it was because you had said how much you loved it.
Yeah.
Talk about that. Talk about why you chose this and what's like your affinity for it.
So, I mean, it's no surprise to anyone who's ever spent any time with me for longer than a few minutes that I grew up as like a musical theater nerd. That was like where I cut my teeth.
Yeah, I think the first time we met, you said, "Hey, John Brash, you're a musical theater nerd."
Yeah,
I was like, that's so weird.
But like I said, I've always enjoyed musicals, and I think that like this and Sweeney Todd kind of give you those little like slice into like what a horror film brought to the stage would look like.
Slice, good one.
Yeah. And so those are ones that have always like stuck out as my favorites. And I've always like my dream role when I was like involved in theater and everything would have been as
Audrey
Seymour.
too.
Yeah, definitely Audrey too. No, as Seymour. I mean, I have the right like look for it. I have the right singing voice for it. So it would have always been like my dream to do that. Not like it's gonna happen. I've got
if we have some extra time on our hands coming up, we should put on our own fucking Little Shop of Horrors stage show.
That'd be pretty.
I think it would be an absolute blast. That would get me back into the theater scene.
Yeah.
Would be being able to do this on stage.
That'd be pretty fun.
And so that's why you chose it, just because you had an affinity for it growing up. Or,
I mean,
Brittany into it too. Like, is that like something you guys shared?
No, I don't know if she's ever seen it.
Huh. I know she had a plant at some point named Audrey too.
We still have Audrey 2.
Oh, okay.
Audrey 2 is very popular.
It keeps getting bigger.
Yeah, sure you should have this thing in the house?
What happened to your 6th cat?
They don't eat cats; they eat people. All right. We don't care about people. We care about cats.
You have been looking a bit anemic lately, John.
Losing all my bloods. But yeah, like I said, I love the music. I love the performances, and I feel like it does some of the best at capturing what like a silly musical can feel like in the audience of watching like an actual live stage play, but makes it a really functional movie. And I think that that's something that's super impressive. Like if you go and you look at like video footage from a performance of it as compared to the movie, a lot of the blocking is very similar, especially inside of the shop. Like if you watch that very first like opening scene and everything, a lot of what like the shop owner does and everything, like everything is all facing towards like an audience in the stage,
right?
And it, like I said, it just
fourth wall.
Yeah, it just works so well as that. And like I said, I think that they cast it perfectly. It has some of the funniest actors of our generation. Everything about it is just it's a flawless film for me.
Yeah,
Right on.
yeah. No, I totally agree. I sent it to you, but I watched the original and this one back to back, so I did the whole. You probably haven't seen it because you're not an interneter, but
So true.
The Michael Fassbender Magneto, where it's like show me the real Mystique, and then it's like perfection when it gets to the real one. So for the original, I was like, show me the real Little Shop of Horrors, and then for this one, perfection, and got a good amount of likes on that review. So other people thought it was funny.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure. All right, let's talk about what we're talking about.
I believe
week.
you. John, bring up that wheel of endless possibilities.
The wheel of endless possibilities.
Endless. I hate you so much. So we've got My Soul to Take. That's your choice. Memento, which was my choice, and then Maniac, the one from 2001? 2012. Whatever. With Elijah Wood.
Yeah.
I wish Elijah would. All right, baby. Spin them. Have we ever gotten a spin again?
I'm going to laugh if that happens right now. It's going to be Maniac.
Nice.
Fuck yes. Well, I'm very excited because 2012's Maniac is one of my favorite horror movies. And
would you say that you need to see the original to enjoy this, or you think that you're good just going straight into this one?
I would say, and people might throw shit at me for saying this, but I would say don't waste your time with the original. Okay. Literally, the only thing that is really interesting about the original is that there are a couple real dope Tom Savini kills, but outside of that, the new one pretty much has no connection outside of the very general concept of there is a maniac who likes to kill people.
Classic.
Yeah. And I dig it. Everything about it, the score, the way it looks, Elijah Wood. So I'm really excited to talk about it next week.
Right on. Cool. So that's what we're doing next week. Stay tuned. And if you haven't already, please check out our regular episode where we are talking about Perfect Blue. Is that right?
Perfect Blue.
I'm blue.
And we'll see you there. Thanks.
See ya.
Keep it creepy.